Hi everyone. Great to have you here waiting for us. I have seen that there are people already on the list. Even though just 1 minute late, there are always somebody waiting, so we rushed. So it's cool that you are joining us as always. Today we have great program. We have cool guests. You will see yourself now, and we have as always Boosted Boris. Boosted Boris, are you here? Yes. Perfect. Yes, as always, if there are issues with sound, with video, with anything, drop in the comments. Also, during the talks, don't be shy, ask the questions right during the talk. I will read them out after the talk anyway. So yeah, so that we buffer a bit of the questions. And I guess we can just go to it. Our first speaker is Cheuk from the United Kingdom, and here she is. Hello.
Hey, hello. Hello.
Welcome. It's great to have you here all the way from London virtually. Still counts. Choke, we know each other, I guess, a bit from the Python conferences mainly. I remember you always moderated lightning talks, right?
that was kind of my first year doing it. And
Oh, okay.
Mark, because I know him. He's my friend. Actually, we met at EuroPython as well. And he was like, "Oh, do you want to try host it, like doing the lightning talk with me?" I was like, "Oh yeah, let's try do that." And that was fun. So yeah.
It felt like you are experienced in it because I remember when I presented my lightning talk that was about the cycling thing. I had issues connecting to HDMI, and you just managed to somehow keep the attention of people for all these multiple minutes while we've been trying to fix things up. Is that just your talent or is it a practice?
Don't know. Maybe yeah, I think I'm just like very thick skin. I don't mind being laughed at or anything. So yeah, that's my talent, one of my talents. I don't know.
It certainly is, I can tell you. And I have hard time feeling more than, let's say, 30 seconds if there are issues. So I hope today we won't have it because I won't
Yeah.
be able to keep up your level, of entertaining.
No,
Good.
actually, I would like you to help if there's any technical difficulties. So yeah.
Oh, of course I will. I'll do my best. I just say that
Yeah.
you set the standard very high. Good. So Chuck works at Terminus DB, right? Will you tell us a bit about that? What exactly is it?
Yeah, so Terminus DB, first of all, why I love working for them is that because they're an open source software. So it's an open source graph database. So I was working as a data scientist before, so data is always something that I'm interested in. So having this open source graph tool that could store data like Git, so could really improve the pipeline of machine learning and also a lot of stuff. So and it's open source, so that's why I love working for it.
I
Yeah.
see. Nice. The audience is greeting us. There are people saying hi to me, to you, to Boris, to Nicola, who is still waiting for his turn. So yeah, it's great to see that we have big, nice audience as always today. Hi to everybody. Also,
Hey.
special hi to St. Petersburg, to Lisa. Let's see what's the longest connection distance that we will have today.
Cool.
Yeah, cannot read through all of the comments yet, but I see that a lot of them are coming. People are
Yeah.
asking how are things, how is the weather. So yes, we will certainly discuss that on the break. Now, as we already started with Choke introduction, could you tell what are you going to talk about today?
Right. So it's gonna be a little talk, I would say. It's gonna be much lighter. It's gonna be, but it still consists of some live coding. I hope I didn't mess it up. I hope because live coding is always a accident could happen. So
Oh,
maybe at that time you can help me out.
that's
And
fine. We
and also
have
I would love,
Boris, remember. We have
yeah.
Boris. If you need more drama, he'll make you drama.
Yeah. And Yeah, and I love audience, kind of, also like when I do because I also stream tutorials, so sometimes I make really silly mistakes, typo, and my audience would like shout at me about like the thing that I overlook, which is super cool. So
Oh,
please correct me if I did something wrong in the
true.
live
You
coding.
have a Twitch channel, right?
Yes, I have a Twitch channel,
Maybe you say a
and
few words about that before we start.
sorry.
Maybe you can tell a bit about it before we start. Maybe it will be interesting for our audience. They also join your channel.
Oh yeah, so my Twitch username is just my name, Cheuk Ting _ HO. So Cheuk Ting actually is one word. So my name is actually Cheuk Ting in Chinese. So I don't know
Okay.
why it kind of translates this way. Ting become my second name. So it's fun. It's funny. But yeah, so I have a Twitch channel that I do streaming 4 times a week. So 3
4
of them will
times
be
a week.
tutorial.
Oh my God.
Yes, it's a lot of work.
It is.
So yeah, so 3 of them will be tutorials. So one of them is Python tutorials, just in general Python things for people. Now we are having the testing month, so we got to talk about testing and linting and all this stuff. And Monday I would run a data science tutorial using the Python data science tool to do some just kind of explain those to people. And Wednesday I have a kind of like this, but much lighter, because like I would invite friends. So it's just like what you're
Nice.
doing. Like I would invite friends to come over and we just chat about things about Python.
Well, this is
And
much easier than data science tutorial, I have to say.
yeah, and also I run the tutorial about Terminus DB, of course, because it's quite cool, but it's quite new, so people don't know about it. So it's good to run some tutorials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. Yeah, so we can post a link actually in
Yeah.
comments. Yes, during your talk, I'll try to find it to your Twitch channel and I'll post it
Yeah.
right here.
Oh,
So
actually, it's in the
people, yeah,
slide, so you will have it.
it's
Just take
not
a screenshot.
clickable there. It's not clickable.
Yeah.
I'll post it. I'll make it nice. Clickable
Okay.
hyperlink.
Or I can send it to you maybe after the my
Yes, and after
presentation.
in
Yeah.
description as well. Okay, agreed. Before you start, I'll just say that Lisa remembers you from EuroPython 2019, and she says that you're excellent lightning talk host, just as I said as well. So it's not just me.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's just jump right into your talk.
Right.
Please
Okay.
start the
So
screen sharing, and I'll need to do some tweaks on my side as well.
yeah,
Wrong guy.
yeah,
Here
I
we go.
think I'm sharing. Yeah, good. So I think you can see if there's any technical difficulties, give me a shout, and I will try to see if I can solve it. And I won't be looking at the chat, so you can interfere me if there's questions or anything. So I don't mind. Again, live coding, things may happen. Just let me know what's wrong.
Don't
And
worry.
yeah, so I'm going to talk about Under and Dunder. So I would say you may come across it. It depends on your Python experience, but I would just assume that you may not know about it, and I would try to explain this to you. If you already know it, please be patient, and maybe you'll find a thing or two that you found it interesting. So I'm Cheuk. So those are my social media thing, and also my Twitch link there. So and actually I have a slides to introduce myself. So I would just quickly go through it, I think. So I work for a lot of open source projects, and I love contributing to open source. So it's great that I work for a Terminus DB, an open source project as well. And also I like organizing conferences and the Python sprints, again related to contributing. And also EuroPython this year will go online, so I would also be trying to help out. And again, I've already talked before that I Twitch, online tutorials and maybe some other Python related stuff. So I hope maybe you'll be interested. So okay, after my shameless plug, so I gotta talk about Python internal functions. So like I said before, I gotta do something very risky today. That I gotta try to do live coding. So I have my Jupyter notebook here. So so I think you're seeing it. So yeah, Jupyter notebook, I love it because it's very good in these occasions that I can't open my IDE, I can't open my terminal, but like I just need to switch the tab and I have a running environment that I could run some code. So first of all, let's introduce some Python internal functions. So I think that everybody has already know about Dunder init, right? So or maybe you haven't, but that's totally fine. That's usually the first internal functions that people encounter, because when they learn about writing a class, then they would, first of all, one of the first function that they write would be Dunder init. So this is a Python class, and these are just like internal functions that is bounded to the instance of this my class. Okay, so this is very, very simple, and it's not doing anything. You just print out something to make that is running the function. So I'll just execute that because I just restarted my kernel. So, but the thing is, the first question is like, how private is my function? So, okay, so my function is, you see the name of my function is a little bit funny. So why do I start with an underscore? So, so some of you may already encounter, if you read somebody's code or if you try to contribute to open source, sometimes you would see these functions that start with an underscore. So these usually we call internal functions. Usually these functions is used by this my class internally. So it's not supposed for the user to use, and so like usually, well, of course, the good practice that you still write doc strings and document these functions, but a lot of the time, the documentation of these internal functions won't have a documentation. But actually, like Spanx got this, when you generate your documentation with Spanx, Spanx is a library, Python library that generate documentations with your doc strings. So they will be omitted. So all these functions that start with an underscore will be omitted. So they're supposed for internal use and not for any users outside calling this class to use. So now let's check how private is my func. So let's first create an instance for my class. So I would be like my object, let's say, equals to my class. Okay. So so you can see that there's some output here. Create an instance. So you see that actually when I create an instance, Dunder init will be. So by the way, double underscore is Dunder. So that's one of the mystery that we gotta solve today. What is Dunder? It's double underscore. So okay, so Dunder init is actually called, and it created an instance. So I think a lot of people know about this. So I won't be explaining too much. It's quite straightforward that okay, when you create an instance, this will be called. And are you still seeing my screens? Is that still okay? I hope it's okay. Yeah, I'll just move forward. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So so yeah, that's very simple, right? So okay. So how about you can have other functions that's supposed for the users to use. So you could be like my class, you can have my print. So print out something. So you can have self, always self, because it's a bounded function with a class. So you can have a message, right? So here you can be like print out a message. So this is, so I can obviously I can call my print there. So I can print out a message with my print function. So this is my message. So something went wrong. Oh, I haven't run it again, is it? Or I have to restart it. So okay, 1 second. Restart and run all. Okay, right. It will be fine. Okay. Yep. And ooh, I love the drum. Okay, so we got it done. So we have this is my message. So it's call. So this function is call, and it got print out the message. So this is totally normal. But so like I said, this function is supposed to be internal, but can I call it? Well, let's try. So I would do that. I can't have autocomplete. Oh, I have, but it's slow. Okay, so anyway, like I can still call out my function is not secret. So I can do a little bit of the trick to change it. I can make it double underscore, just like the Dunder init, because well, let's see what happened, and well, I hope I don't have to restart, but it doesn't work before, so I would just like restart and run over like I did before. Okay. Yep. Right. So yeah, you can see that we got an error here. So my class doesn't have an attribute on my func there. So so actually that's my fault. No, it's like double underscore still doesn't work. It's obviously there. Why you don't let me to do that? Well, because when you use Dunder, then it's an internal function. It's locked. So that's the one of the difference between a single and double underscore. That double underscore actually you can't call it, but with a single underscore you can call it. You can still call it. So there are actually a lot of double underscore functions. So actually, let's use my object again, and then to check what is bound with this object, which is an instance that I created, you can use dir to do that. So I know some of you would know about it. So you see, oh my God, there's so many things here. So actually, I have a little spoiler here, but I'll explain later why. Okay. So so you can see that there's a lot of different things here, and all these actually are internal functions that is bounded with this instance. You can also see the other things that's bound to it as well, and so all these actually like is inherit. It actually is like when you have a class object, it's actually inherit from the the class object itself. So no matter what class object you created, you will have a lot of these stuff. You have dir because dir is actually this dir that you're calling, and you have equal because this is actually what you do when you have equal, and you can have string. So you can actually, like, when you try to print it out, it's actually like when you do str here or do a print, and what it does here is like it's calling this star. And also you got a doc here, so that's your doc string there, and so yeah, you got all this stuff that is bound to your class object. Okay, so so yeah, I think I've already go ahead with all these. So I would say that's like because now we have this Dunder thing, so I'll just ignore all the things that I've planned. So for this double underscore thing, so where does this go, right? So like when I call it, it says there's no attribute. Why? This doesn't make sense, right? And so actually, I said there's a spoiler here because you see that, well, what is this thing? What is this thing? So this thing is saying that actually it changes the name of the class with an underscore in front, and it changes, it basically changed this, change the name of this Dunder my func into this name, right? So what we can try is to call this one to see if that works. So yeah, my Jupyter notebook is as messy as my room, so now you know how my bedroom looked like. So let's try to call this mysterious function. And oh my God, this is our private function, is it? It prints out this thing. So actually what Python does is that when it sees that when you define an internal function which is not one of these default ones, right? It's double underscore function. It will change the name of it to something very weird like this. Okay, and so that's why when you try to call it, it won't exist. So with this knowledge, actually, you can still call back those functions if you really want to. But of course, there's the reason why it's getting locked. Okay, so this is a little live demonstration, just a little bit of fun to dig around to see all this stuff. Oh, and one other thing that is the internal function, that one of them is I really found fascinating, and I will see if I can find it for you. So so yeah, all this stuff are so random right now, so ignore this title thing. I'm not going with my plan. So I will create my list object. Okay, my list objects is a list of 1, 2, and 3. Okay, nothing special. So let's look at what this my list thing has. So you see that you got some of the things that you had, we have looked at before, but some of the things that we don't. And you see that actually, because it's a list, it got all this, all this list method that we all are familiar with. We have pop, we have remove, reverse, append, all these are list method that we are familiar with. But there's one thing that I found is I hope I get, yeah, so it's get item here. Okay, what is this get item? So I want you to guess what this get item do. Okay, so when I'm typing, so you can put your bet down, like what this does. So what I gotta do is I gotta put a 0 here, and it gives you back 1. So get item is actually equivalent to this. It's equivalent to this. So actually, when you use a square bracket to any kind of sequential object, actually it will call this get item hidden function to do this for you. So there are lots of all these little hidden functions that's actually quite interesting. So I don't have time to show you all of them, but I would encourage you to dig deeper and look at it and look at them, and you will find something like this, that's super interesting to you. And after knowing all this knowledge, you may think, oh, like, why is it useful? Why do I have to know? Like, you can actually, for example, I've used Panda for quite a while. I was a data scientist. And then when I look at what's inside a Panda's data frame object, actually, I found a lot of gold inside. A lot of operations that I did actually is basically just calling these functions, and I didn't know about it. So again, I think that would worth another talk to talk about it. I just want to make it like introductory talk for you. So I think I still have, how much time do I still have, actually? May I ask? I'm very bad with timekeeping as well.
How much time you need?
Well, I can just like go through the rest of the slides and then make it light. And yeah, I would rather spend more time to interact with audience if that's okay.
We are relaxed. You have time, but I think also we'll have some discussion after as well.
Yeah,
take the normal
I would rather do that. But
right.
Yeah, maybe at EuroPython I would have more time to give another. When I submit a talk, then maybe I will have more time to explain. But this is just an introductory kind of things, because all these internal functions, I found them interesting and fascinating. But anyway, so another thought that I got provoked by discovering all this stuff is that actually because it started with my personal story when I was developing the Python client for Terminus DB. That's my job, and I found that because we had the team that worked together. So one of my colleagues write a lot of functions for the API client, and she used the double underscore for those methods. And I understand it's an internal method; it's not supposed to be called, but I was like, but that's not very common practice, because I've contributed to open source projects, and I see that most people, they would just use a single underscore. So, but a single underscore is only actually, if you really dig deep down, I think there's a Stack Overflow, an answer that I came across is saying that the single underscore actually does nothing different from just a normal function. It's just that it's just in tab 8, it suggests that those are actually internal functions. Okay, it's just a suggestion. It's a kind suggestions. Users can still call it, can still use it. So it's still very transparent and open. And for double underscore, of course, I've shown you the trick that actually Python internally we change the name of it, so it's kind of hidden from the outside world. So it's kind of avoiding people to use it. So it's kind of like a restrictions to put on the users. So now I'm like thinking, so which one should I choose? I think most people in the Python community would actually choose to use single underscore for internal functions. And it kind of, I have a theory about it, because the Python community is actually like, we really embrace the openness, really embraced open source and all this stuff. So that's why, we kind of, we suggest things. We have like PEP8 and all this stuff. We have a convention, but we don't put restrictions, because we want the community to actually, they could use it. It's like all the source code actually is, chances are your source code if for open source project will be on GitHub, so people actually can look at your code. They can clone it. They can, even if you use a double underscore, people can change it back to a single underscore and like change your code whatever they want. But I think it's also kind of embedded some sense of openness, some sense of open source idea inside a Python convention. I found it fascinating, and I hope that I hope it makes sense. It's just my little observation, and so yeah, I think that's it. What I'm trying to present today. So like I said, I will try to keep it light. So it's just very interesting stuff that I found, and I hope you like it. And you can ask me questions and or any things that you feel interested and want to go on with a discussion. I'm happy to do that as well. So yeah, I think that's it. And should I stop sharing?
Yes, please
Okay.
turn back your webcam view, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Yeah. So.
We are waiting for the video stream.
Yeah, it's
worry.
my camera is locked because I have shared my screen, but I've stopped sharing my screen, but I don't know why it doesn't. Oh, stop sharing. I have to press that button. Okay. Good. I got it.
That's
I'm
a
so
thing
dumb.
of the
Okay.
web client.
Okay. Hey. Yeah, I'm a bit dumb with using Skype. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
That's how it's supposed to work. Now it's perfect. Thanks for your talk. So now let's wait for some questions in the comments. Please post your questions there. I'll start with my own questions. Okay, Cheuk, mostly what I hear, especially from people new to Python, about the magic functions is if you're supposed to touch them at all. Like some books say, whatever starts with underscore, dangerous. Don't do it. It's a hack. What is your opinion? What should people touch and what not if you're working on somebody else's project, especially?
Well, it's like what I said at the end. I think is there's some openness embedded to it. So I can't say that like, oh, you shouldn't touch it. I would actually, if that's my project, I would encourage people to explore them. I would encourage people to look at it. And if you don't understand anything, I'm happy to go there and talk with you and to see like what you don't understand. You're very welcome to look at the code that I do for, let's say, Terminus DB, because it's open source, is there on GitHub. So very welcome to see my code, even though it's super messy and I'm a bit like embarrassed to say like, we don't have enough testing and the code is a bit messy. We try to lint it and I've done the linting, spent a lot of effort cleaning up the code. But I'm very open for people to poke around and play. But of course, there's a reason why the creator put in an underscore in front, or double underscore even. That's very good reason. I think you should also, like, for example, the creator create this like kind of openness for you to look at a code or use it, but also respect that why they do it. Like if you could try not to, because it's not supposed for you to use, but if you're really like, you know, struggling with your code, maybe like, oh, there's some like bugs that you found that actually need some patching that may not be able to be patched within 2 or 3 months, and you need to quickly get things done, then sometimes, you know, hacking around may be a temporary solution. Then maybe you could totally do that. I have nothing against it. I just think that, you know, be respectful and understand why the creator designed it that way. That may be a reason. Try not to use it unless you really have to. So yeah.
All right, thank you. I'll read out some comments, I guess. Well, Pradwan says, great talk. Thank you very much for that. Lisa loved it.
Thank you.
Stefania loved it. And I think Stefania has a question. Do you think there is a big difference computationally in using internal functions or the shortcuts?
Oh, definitely the shortcut is a syntactic candy. So definitely use that. It's more beautiful. And like, for example, using a square bracket, everybody that has some, you know, experience using Python will understand what you're trying to do. So totally use those. They are created just for our pleasure. And but actually it's good to understand what actually it does under the hood as well. So all those double underscore functions that I show with the dir, actually, they are kind of like silence worker. They're working at the back for your Python object and all your Python code to make things work. But on the surface, everything looks beautiful. So it's kind of like the leg of a swan that is like, paddling very, hardly under the water, but you can't see them. You just see a beautiful swan on top.
All right, but performance-wise, the same thing? Shortcuts?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I don't think there would be a big difference. You can actually try doing experiment using timeit. I doubt there will be any difference. I think they are just the same.
Boris loved it too. Okay, Stefania says, great talk and insights in the Python community. That's nice. Anastasia liked your talk. Cheers to
Thank you.
Baltics. And Jürgen says that he have seen you on PyCon 2019 in Berlin.
Yay,
Is that
hello.
true?
Yes, I've been to. Yes, that's one of my my favorite. And also, I remember one thing. Like, sorry, I'm so embarrassed that I always remember food. And I remember last year I discovered there's a gelato shop like very near to the conference venue. And every day in the conference after lunch, I just ask people to go with me to the gelato shop. And I'm so embarrassed that I always talk about food. Sorry.
Well, it's a good thing, gelato. Come on.
Yeah.
We have one more question. Pradvan asks, can we override the Dunder methods in a class definition? And if you recommend it.
Actually, you can do that. You can define your own, for example, for that Dunder str, Dunder star. Actually, it is like when you print, when you print that object, you usually would get a very funny, telling you what that object is with the address of it, which is a kind of hexa, it's very funny numbers. Actually, you can change that by change the star there. And for normal circumstances, you don't have to change it. And if you want to change it, make sure you know what you're doing, I would say. But yeah, that's totally overridable. But that's more like, I would say, at more advanced usage. And if you understand what you're doing, yeah, totally fine. Yeah.
Oh, I already look forward to asking these questions to Nicola, our next speaker. Would he be very angry if I would use all of his underscore functions? But let's see what he says about it. You see, I'm a bit concerned mostly about the backward compatibility. If you build, let's say, an extension to some framework and you use too much of the magic, then in the next version could not work anymore because of that. And I guess this is very specific to the project. I've seen like very, very strict approaches, people who even name the logger with underscore because technically they declare it as a private attribute of a class, so underscored, but most of people just call it logger and that's it. It's very opinionated thing, I'd say.
Yeah, there's always different voices in the community, but I think that's also a beautiful thing because it's not like, a small number of people made a decision. The Python community is very happy to listen to all these comments and discussions. You can go to python.org to have a discussion on issues, and I'm sure that the steering council would also listen to people who suggest things. If there's a big suggestions that a lot of people want to suggest, then they would obviously consider that. So yeah.
Speaking of PSF, did you see the new board already?
The new board, there's the new elections. I didn't follow that well, but I should have. And actually, I just recently become a voting member because I follow Naomi's call that she want more people from different backgrounds to sign up to be a voting member. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, if you have contribute, 5 hours per month, then you can join." I was like, obviously, I passed that, that's criteria. So I know a lot of people actually does, and if you do, please sign up to be a voting member. And they're now electing the new board, and so now it's a time that I should pay more attention to those those community stuff.
When can we vote for you? When will you be in the list?
Well, I don't think I will be very, very soon. I think I still think that, of course, it's not the only factor that I think it takes a lot to be the board member, and I'm not ready for the challenge yet. And you need a lot of devotion of your time. You need to kind of be, know a lot of, be very well reach to the community, so you kind of get a lot of opinion and people trust that you can represent them. But I would love to see a more diverse board. I would love to see maybe a more representative from from Africa or from Latin America, because in those region we kind of the community still we still need to grow them. They wish there are more users in those regions. So yeah.
Good point. Cool. But to the audience, in any case, if you see Cheuk on the list of the candidates for the next board, please vote. She's nice.
Yeah, ready. You're already starting my campaign, even though I haven't joined.
We have an opportunity, we take it, Good. People say thanks. Also, Pradwan, who asked the last question, says he got it. Means good. I also see that people are supporting you to go to the board next time. That is nice.
Yeah, thank
all
you.
Right. Cool. As I said, that I'm gonna post the link to your Twitch channel again to the audience. Check it out. I have no idea how creative you have to be to post things 3 times per week. I do it once per week or once per 2 weeks, and I still depend on speakers like you. I mean, I'm lazy to present myself. So actually, you are driving this show. Thank you very much. For our audience also, I contacted Cheuk a week ago. I said, hey, I'm doing this stream, maybe you could join. And you've been so far like the most confident speaker. Like, yeah, I can do it. When is the next one? Next week? I'm in. Like, you know what you do. I thought, she has perhaps some streaming background. And indeed you do.
Yeah, I'm happy to share knowledge. So if any audiences want me to present, I'm happy to do it. Yeah.
All right. Great. So thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck with what you do. I think that Python people appreciate it a lot. Good. Before we go to the next speaker now, Boris, can you please make one more applause for Cheuk? That was nice. So thanks.
Thank
next,
you.
Yes, before we go to Nicola's talk, there is Boris, as a good tradition of the Python show, solo. So Boris, did you practice? Admit, if you practiced, hit the drum 1 time. Oh, he practiced a lot. All right, then we are absolutely looking forward to your solo, and after the solo, we will have a little chat. All right, then a big applause for Boosted Boris. 5-minute break. Let's go. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Great performance, Boris. Thank you, thank you. Boris, can we see you for a sec? That is Boris. That is Boosted Boris. Boris, I just dropped in comments links to your blogs. You promised us 2 nice articles last time. Did you publish them?
Yes, actually, I managed to publish one, the big article about our drums setup, so you can read it, how it was difficult and how we managed to do this with Anton as well.
Nice.
And the second one will be in my tech blog, so you can see it as well soon.
Both are published.
So yeah.
Great. Boris, people have been asking already. Jürgen, I think, was asking on Twitter about your drum setup. So now you published it. What else can you write about? Do you have any idea about the next story?
Of course. So next story it will be about how to set up your own band. So with a drummer, with a bass, guitar, and so on and so forth. So yeah,
Nice.
so the next challenge.
Great. Lisa says, cool, thank you. I also can absolutely agree that every time I hear your solos, they're getting better and better. The next milestone will be to make a band, as you say, but that is hard because some of the people I know who play and know how to stream, they are not in Munich, and the latency is a big deal in this thing. So I don't know exactly how we're gonna do it, but eventually we have to. Will you be ready for that?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
We should do this.
It's cool. We have a guitar player. It was on the third show, I think. And now I got contacted by the piano girl. Maybe she will make a solo for us. Maybe next time as a second solo. We'll see. But that sounds cool. We'll be good. So finally you'll have some company, hopefully. Yeah, but meanwhile, and how do you get ideas for your solos?
Basically, I am subscribed on several famous and not famous drummers. So I took some ideas from them, from book, from blogs, and so on, and combined. And yeah, now actually I finally managed to record my solo. So yeah.
Cool. Will be interesting to hear it without Skype compression. Good. Thank you again. I liked it, Lisa liked it, Anastasia liked it, and I think everybody who is online right now liked it too. So can we now make a cool introduction for our next speaker?
Of course.
Okay. And our next speaker is Nicola Iarocci. Ta-da-da-da.
Hey. Hello.
How are you doing, Nicola? How are things in Ravenna? Was it Ravenna?
Yes, Ravenna, that's correct. I'm doing great, thank you. Weather here is very nice. We have a beautiful sun here. It's actually 8 p.m. I don't know in what time zone you guys are, but here we still have a very nice and sunny day.
So we are all in different time zones, I guess.
Yeah.
A funny fact, the 1 hour more in St. Petersburg, but it does not mean that it's darker because of white nights.
Oh, yeah.
You've been there. You've been on the Peter Pie.
Yeah.
You've been there.
Yeah, I've been there, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times, actually. So I have a lot of very good friends there, and they always have been super nice with me. I love being there. I hope to go back. Hopefully one day they will allow us to travel again and meet in person. I mean, conferences online are nice, virtual conferences and streaming, but in person is a whole different story, in my opinion.
Indeed. Well, you don't have to wait for the flights, right? You can take your Triumph Bonneville, St. Petersburg.
Absolutely, that would be great. Actually, I have a friend here in Ravenna who went to St. Petersburg with his motorbike. He He has a Harley Davidson, unfortunately, not a Triumph, but it's still a very nice journey. I should do that one day. But in St. Petersburg, they have this habit of having their Peter PI event like in November or something like that. So it's not very nice for a very long motorbike trip, but maybe I should do that one day.
Did you put the glass in front to
No,
protect
not at all.
from wind?
Oh,
Because it's
I
not
don't
stylish.
like.
It's ugly.
Yeah, it's not stylish. I'm Italian after all.
Yes, and it's a Triumph.
Yeah, and that's a
You
Triumph.
don't buy a
It's
Triumph to spoil it with the glass.
so you know what I'm talking about because you're a biker as well, aren't you?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, very well.
Nicola, what are you going to share with us today?
So I thought after a technical talk, I wanted to share, let me say, an inspirational story about my own story with open source in the Python world. I'm kind of an imposter actually, because to be honest with you all guys, I've been a C developer for so many years. As you can see from my whiteboard, I actually have an age, and I've been doing C and C# for so many years. And I've come to the Python world only about 10 years ago, I think. And so I have never done open source before joining the Python community. My open source adventure started with Python. And so I wanted to tell this story and see if I can inspire people to jump into the bandwagon and start contributing and, starting to work on open source much more, not just use open source, but also contribute to open source. That's
especially to Eve framework.
Yeah, the Eve framework, but also any other open source framework and libraries, and not just in Python, of course.
Cool. Good. Then we can start with your presentation, and after your talk, we can have more casual discussion. So please start sharing your screen.
Yes. Let me start with sharing my screen. Or do you see it?
Yes.
Not this one. This one. All right. So my story with open source. Well, real quick, who I am. I'm a weirdo. They call me a weirdo in my family, but also in my developer community here in Ravenna. And that's because I do a lot of languages and different stuff. Real quick, what I do is C#, F#, so functional languages, and also Python, a lot of Python by night most of the time, because I'm working on my open source libraries and they don't really pay the bills, so I have to do C# and F# in order to get my family going. But I really doesn't matter. I love all the languages I work on, so it's not a big deal. So how I got into open source? As I said, I have been a C developer for many years, and we didn't have open source there, in C# especially back then. At some point when at my company we wanted to bring our software on the web, to the web, I decided I wanted to try something new. And I went and looked into Python, and that's when I started to know more and, kind of live with the open source community, which is all around Python and its environment. So I started studying Python, and a few months after my start with the Python language, I went to EuroPython. I think it was EuroPython 2012, so like 8 years ago. It was being held in Florence back then. I went there. I submitted a talk, actually. It was about how, the title was something like how to build a RESTful API with Flask. And it was a 90, I think, 1 hour and a half long talk about Flask. I went there. I was very scared about that because I before that talk, I never talked in public. I'm actually a very shy person. And also, I never talked in English before to an audience, so it was very frightening for me. It was if I remember well, I also was the first speaker in the morning or the first day, so it was super scary. And well, the talk went, I think, quite well. But what surprised me was that at the end of the talk, a lot of people came to the stage and they were like, hey, Nicola, why don't you release your code as open source? What you've been doing is interesting. We want to see it, just release it, and so we can use it, we can contribute to it. And so a few months later, I released my open source framework. Now, back then, 8 years ago, you didn't have all the REST API framework that you have right now, that you have available right now. So it looked like a very good idea. If I should do that today, probably I wouldn't do that because there are so many options already. But back then it was actually interesting. It was also the moment when MongoDB and the NoSQL databases were surfacing and becoming mainstream. And back then I was working with that. So my first release was the Eve framework, which is, of course, a REST API framework designed for human beings. As you can see, it has been quite successful. And along with Eve, I also released the Cerberus data validation library. Basically, when I was working at my REST API framework, I also needed to validate the data coming into the framework, into the API endpoints. And so I had to build some kind of data validation. And while I was working on that, I went like, wait a minute, data validation is not just a problem of REST APIs. Everyone sooner or later has to do data validation. So why not split data validation out of the Eve framework and make it a library on its own? Back then, 8 years ago, you didn't have too many options in the Python community. So I went and built this library, and I'm spending some work on this library because there is something interesting I want to share with you. And actually, let me go back to the browser. All right, so here you see the PyPy starts about the Eve framework. This is live. Let me refresh it just to make sure that they are up to date. Hope you're seeing what I'm seeing. So we can look at the downloads. Last month, for example, we have quite a nice number of downloads, like 15,000 downloads per month, which is nice. Maybe I should try and increase the font size so you can actually see something. So, I mean, very nice. Lots of downloads for an API framework. Now let's go and look at Cerberus data validation library, which is basically the stepchild of Eve. I really didn't pay a lot of attention to this library when I released it. I'm mostly known for Eve, but let's look at Cerberus downloads. And here you have them, more than 1 million last month, and it's been consistent for the last couple of years or maybe even more. We only have PyPy stats available for since maybe 1 or 2 years ago, so I'm not sure about the past. But what we're seeing here is that Cerberus, the validation library, is actually doing like 100 more downloads and installs than Eve itself. Now, it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because data validation, again, is something that everybody has to deal with, while a REST API framework is something that sure is interesting, powerful, but not everybody really needs to go online with a web service and a REST API service. So it makes sense, but still the numbers here are impressive. So if there is one lesson from this talk is probably you don't want to look at the GitHub stars to judge if a project is successful or not. If we go back to the Eve slide, you see we have like more than 6,000 stars on Eve, while Cerberus only has 2,000 stars. But yet it is doing a lot more downloads than Eve itself. So one takeaway from this talk is just don't look at the GitHub stars, or just don't look just at those. Look at the call frequency, at the adoption graph. There are so many variables you have to keep in mind when you are judging an open source project. So over time, the framework spawned a number of satellite projects. The ecosystem has been growing. We have contributors from all around the world, and it is super nice. So nice that, in fact, I actually went and started doing open source on the C# side of things. This is a small project, a very local project, just for the Italian public. But still, even in Italy, we are starting to see a lot of open source activity around C#, an environment in which you probably know we aren't really renowned for open source activity. So it is very nice and promising, and it is exciting for me to help share the open source, culture in the .NET world. So let's talk about the advantages you have when you release your own work on the open source. So of course, the first one is new features for free. This is very important. Now look at this pull request. This is probably quite old, yes, 2014, but it is a nice story because first of all, it is a very powerful feature. Document version is basically your API can now, Eve API can now serve not just the most recent document, but any version of the document over time. So it is very nice. 21 files changed, as you can see, more than a lot of commits. But this guy, Josh, actually has a nice story because I found out a few months after he contributed to this project that he was actually working for a very special company, very interesting company, and they were using Eve internally. Now, I can't disclose the name of the company, but I will just say that they are sending spaceships to the International Space Station. Have been doing that for a few years. And if you gave a look at my T-shirt during my presentation, you probably can guess what company it is. So for me, it was a very incredible, actually, surprise to learn that my project was being used in that kind of environment. They actually went on and sent me these T-shirts and some more toys to play with, along with a handwritten letter by the developer team, which I have framed here in my room, and I'm very proud of it. And here we have another one in the .NET space, new feature for free. This is very nice. If you are using your project in your own company, probably your company is making money out of your project and getting new features and bug fixes for free, even before you find out about these bugs. For example, here we have a bug which was found out and fixed by a contributor, and we really didn't know about it. We were using our own framework, of course, internally. This was actually a security bug, so very important, and we got it fixed for free before anybody could abuse it. So super nice. You get a lot of value added to your projects. So this is probably a pitch you can do to your company. Hey, we should probably at least consider releasing our software as open source, at least what we actually what is not very sensitive, because we can actually get some value back from doing that. And also another very important topic for me is quality and also longevity of your project. So more eyes see more. Here, another interesting and very precious to me pull request. This guy here, you can read his message here, and he wanted to contribute to the project. He probably wasn't really skilled at programming in Python, but he wanted to contribute nonetheless. And so he changed like 21 files again, And I want to show you this pull request here. So he went and just fixed a number of typos. Now, as you probably know, I'm not a native English speaker, and we have all these doc strings in the if code. We are talking tens of thousands of code of lines of code, so a lot of those strings. And this contribution came back in 2017. So I realized with horror that for several years, my open source code on GitHub available to the public was filled with typos and errors, etc. So the contribution from this guy, even if it wasn't really code, or new features or bug fixes or something super cool, it was still very precious to the project, very important. I consider it a code quality review. I consider it at the same level as a pure code contribution. So this is also a hint for you. If you want to start contributing to open source projects, you can start doing that, even if you aren't very skilled. You can start with just browsing the code and see where there are small fixes that you can do, which are super interesting and precious for the maintainers. Also, you get a community. And this community is helping in shaping the project going forward. So since we went open source, we started talking about design and future implementations on GitHub. And suddenly I didn't have just 5 colleagues helping me in designing the project, but I have a few hundreds, if not thousands of people contributing with new ideas and suggestions. So that's again value that you add to your project. Of course, it's not all diamonds. You also have some issues to deal with. I actually don't qualify language and cultural barriers as an issue. I find it to be super intriguing and exciting, but yes, you have to learn and deal with it. There are, depending on the area from where people are coming from and trying to contribute, you can get a guy from, I don't know, far Asia opening a ticket, and then a guy from Brazil and another from the US. And because they come from so different areas of the world and cultural areas, different cultures, you maybe sometimes will get a comment that will maybe seem harsh to you, but maybe it's not. It is just someone who isn't very proficient with English. I wasn't and still am not, as you can tell by my speaking. Or maybe he comes from some areas where it is just a cultural thing, being more, what may seem more aggressive, but actually it isn't really more aggressive. It is the way they communicate. And so, yeah, you have to, of course, try to learn and understand how people communicate. Sometimes you really have to parse what people are trying to say. That can be very hard. But yeah, it is something you have to learn and deal with. And then there is maintenance, of course. Over time, I mean, the first weeks of your project going on open source and people adopting it are super exciting. But over time, maintenance can become a burden. This is an old screenshot. Right now, Eva has way more tickets. Hopefully, most of them are closed. But you feel responsible for people who have issues with your project and they need help. Not everyone is going to just pull up a pull request. Most of them will just get in touch with you. And sometimes they won't use GitHub. They will go the email route, which can be very, how can I say that? It can kind of interrupt your flow as you're working. So it can become a burden. And sometimes you have to say no. because everyone wants new features, and these features are super important to them. But you have to look at the project as a whole, the direction the project is pointing to, and you want to keep it moving forward in your own direction. Of course, listening to people and accepting suggestions, adopting new ideas, but always, kind of keep the direction straight. And then you have a responsibility, especially with frameworks like Eve or REST API frameworks. This is just one of the so many issues that have been surfacing over time. And this is a guy who were basically mining Bitcoin after a pull request where he injected some code into an open source pull request. So when a pull request comes in, you have to be super careful about the code, review it, make sure there are no weaknesses or bad actors trying to infiltrate your project. Over time, you understand that it is just an open source project. You are not responsible for other people's lives, and people who adopt your project know that the license does not grant them any right to be assisted right away. It's free, but it can be really taxing. You have to learn. Also, if you do this for money, if you go into open source for money, don't do that. Don't do that. So this is probably a note screenshot from my Patreon page, where you can basically donate for in order to help me keep me working on my project. This is what I was doing a couple of years ago. Let's go and look at Patreon right now, just to give you a live status update. Right, so I'm doing like $66 per month right now. I mean, not a lot. Yes, I'm a bookworm. I read a lot of books, so probably that money will pay my books, but it's not going to pay my bills or my 3 kids' schools, etc. So don't go into open source just for the money. Or if you want to make money out of open source, you have to be really creative. For example, here you might know Michael Kennedy's Talk Python podcast. I've been lucky enough to meet and know Michael back several years ago when we were both at MongoDB headquarters, where we were invited by the MongoDB team. And over time, our friendship grew, and he invited me to build a course around Eve, and he put my course on his Talk Python training website. And yes, that is making a few bucks every month. Those really helps. But yes, you have to find something that is not directly related on donations, because donations of people are donating, but not as much as you might expect, which is a pity actually. So let's go to the consequences of me joining open source. This is what I was back when I was just working in C and C# by day. I was just an obscure developer working in my cubicle, and just 8 a.m., 5 p.m. developer, the drill, right? Then one day I went open source, and somebody found my open source project and posted it on Hacker News. And I was here at my PC with my wife. Actually, we were looking for some place where to go on holidays, and I started receiving notifications about Hacker News, and there was this inbox beeping all the time, and I was like, what's going on? I went and clicked a link, and we found that we were on Hacker News. That's I think just in that day, Eve made like 1,000 GitHub stars, probably, maybe more, and that's when everything changed for me. I started being invited at conferences, live streaming, stuff like that, started speaking. So after my first experience at EuroPython, I went to several other EuroPythons and PyCon conferences, and also C# and C conferences around the world. I started doing some consulting and teaching, something I've never done before. For example, I went to the University of Edinburgh for 1 week of consulting, and it was super nice because I was consulting on Eve itself. So, getting a contract and going on doing some consulting on your own open source project was really amazing. A real milestone in my career. It was super exciting. And over time, I also had some more occasions. For example, this is Dubai. I went for a week in Dubai where they invited me to do some consulting again. So very nice. Now, without me, getting out of my comfort zone and releasing my software as open source, and also, winning the scary thing that is showing my code to the people, I would never have been to Dubai or to Edinburgh. I founded a local community, the Romagna. If you are in Italy, you can join it. I also received over time a few awards. This is the Microsoft MVP award. I've been receiving it for 5 years now. Super nice. We also get to go to the Microsoft headquarters once per year, so that's super nice. Actually, this year we didn't go because of the lockdowns, but hopefully we will start going back, and also some more awards over time. But what's more important for me is that I'm learning a lot more than what I used to learn when I was just a solo developer in my office. Just because I speak, I actually have to learn the same thing I do every single day. I have to learn way more deeply just because I have to explain them to my audience, be a conference public or just because I'm teaching to colleagues, etc. So open source is kind of forcing me to learn a lot more, even when I write code, just because I know that my code will be seen by the public, by the strangers, can be intimidating, but actually is now something that really is a very strong motivation for me to do better, and so learn more. Networking, of course. And nowadays, I do all these things like speaking, training, and receiving awards, etc. So open source really rocked my world. It totally changed my life, as professional life at least, but probably even my personal life. I made many friends all around the world. But my advice is take it easy. Now, I talk about Eve, Cerberus, etc., but this is actually my first pull request. As you can see, it was a minor fixes at the design documentation. So even myself, I just started with a simple pull request 8 years ago where I was fixing some, probably, I don't know if they were typos or something else. And by the way, I was contributing to a data validation library. This is back when I was looking at data validation library to adopt for Eve. Then I didn't adopt this validation library, but still I was doing some research, and I started by contributing. It was super exciting when my first pull request got merged back then. You also have to do your homework anyway. If the project requires test coverage, you have to provide test coverage. I have several pull requests in Eve and Cerberus which are stuck there just because they lack proper test coverage, for example. So when you go to a repository, just make sure you check the contributing guidelines and make sure that you do your homework and do all that is necessary to increase the chances of your contribution to be accepted. And yes, sometimes things just don't go as planned. For example, this pull request here has been sitting there for several years and still has not been merged. They totally ignored me. And actually now you see us 7 thumbs up here, but over time they become a few dozens, but still the original maintainer of this project is just ignoring me. So it's okay, it can happen. It happens to everyone, actually. It is very likely that your first contributions will be ignored, actually, but keep trying. Sometimes it will be the maintainer who isn't really interested. Sometimes it will be you who didn't properly do your homework, and sometimes it's just better luck, but insist. And so there is this, what I call cognitive bias. So the contributor wannabe is intimidated, and yet there are tons of projects out there, and they are all striving for contributors. So in the words of a friend of mine, the truth is that there is no luck in becoming an open source developer. You don't become an open source developer just by luck. You need dedication, will and grit, and a strong desire to learn new things. But the good news is that you can actually become an open source developer, and with relatively ease, to be honest. And this was Matteo Collina, who is a Node.js technical steering committee member, a super expert in the JavaScript world. Make sure you do your homework again. If you are going to release an open source project, make sure your license is exactly as you want it to be, because you don't want to get into trouble in the future with your open source project. Here, there are a few links just to give you a few direction on how to join how to get started, just for real beginners. I will post a link to these slides so you can check them out later on. My advice is start from your own toolchain. For example, here, I was working on Python, and I was looking at the support for Python in Visual Studio on Windows. And well, there were some issues in the documentation. I went and contributed to the documentation and then to the tool itself. And by the way, Microsoft, which was back 10 years ago, wasn't really into open source at all. Right now is totally into open source. So you can see my contribution here. I went and became one of the original authors of the Python documentation and in Visual Studio, which is super nice. I say this because it is your toolchain. You know your tools. Those are the tools that you use every single day, and probably you are aware of bugs or issues, documentation pitfalls, and you can actually go and fix them or try to help and fix them, right? And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Here are my links. I'm very active on Twitter. On my website, you find some more information about me, or you get in touch with me via email. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicola. It was a great talk. It's nice to see the history of Eve, especially after you know a bit of a framework, to know more and more about the author. Even though I know you for quite a while, also from PyCon Web, but the story gets better and better. We have positive comments. Not so many questions, actually, because people loved it. Jürgen says you left him speechless. Fantastic journey, and thanks for sharing.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah, you impressed Anastasia, who is also thankful, and as well as Laisa. So good job.
Thank you.
Also from my side. But I do have questions. I always do.
Yeah, of course. I was waiting for it.
Good. We can start practical. I know that there are different feedback for the GitHub projects. Usually it's nice, but did you meet also this kind of issues that are created in rather negative key, like, oh, this does not work, oh, why is this not supported? Perhaps you did. So what would be your recommendation to other open source contributors if you just created your open source child, you put it there, and then somebody complains right away, it doesn't work? How do you take this?
So honestly, it happens all the time. I mean, most of the community is super nice, and you have like a 99 out of 100 persons just being super nice. But when your open source project grows over time, you can't avoid people who are just, maybe aggressive, maybe they expect you to fix their problem right away. It happens. The first times that would happen to me, I couldn't sleep, to be honest. I was very worried about that, not because they were being aggressive, in general, because I felt responsible for their issues. I was like, I need to fix that, because otherwise people aren't going to be happy about me and my project. I was very scared about, over time you realize that you put a lot of effort into your project, and the simple fact that you go public with that, and there are so many people who are supportive of your project, it probably means that you don't really have to worry about the aggressive people, the aggressive one, the people. I mean, there are bad apples. You can't avoid that, and they're going to find your project sooner or later. So it's okay. It's like in real life, you know, you meet bad persons, people who are aggressive, who tend to be, you know, not very nice with you. If they issue the ticket is meaningful for the project, I will keep working on it. I will consider it anyway. If it's just, you know, a troll trying to raise awareness about their problem, etc., I will just close the ticket anyway. Right now I sleep very well, but I didn't used to do that. It's been a very, you know, learning journey over time. Yeah, at the beginning it can be intimidating, but you can overcome that and understand, realize that most people are nice, love your project, actually want to help, and you can't just get your life ruined because there is one jackass trying to be, you know, a cool guy.
Thanks. That's a nice answer. So now you sleep without any trouble if people comment something negative.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. It's okay. It's part of life. You have issues with the project and also with people, but most people will be super nice with you, and so over time, the balance will be super positive anyway.
Cool. Pradvan says, "Thanks a lot for sharing."
This is the T-shirt, by the way. This is the T-shirt.
Occupy Mars. Okay, that's ambitious.
That's a hint about the company.
Hopefully, Mars will run Eve at some point.
Hopefully not. I don't want astronauts to get stranded on Mars just because of my open source project.
So if you get a GitHub issue from Mars that something is not working, I guess
that would be phenomenal.
We'll keep you awake at night though, again.
So one day when we meet again, Anton, I will show you the letter from those guys because it's super nice. I need to take it with me on my motorbike on our next motorbike trip. I'm sure we will have one day.
Did you do anything with the PyBikers domain, by the way?
No, I didn't. You didn't reply to me, so I didn't do anything with it. It was just for you. It was a present.
Nice, thanks. It's going to be better, and the club is going to grow. Okay, yeah, I have more questions. Did you try GitHub sponsorship? Maybe it's more accessible.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Actually, I have a GitHub sponsorship activated on both Cerberus and Eve, and it's been active for a few months. I didn't get one back in the whole period, so I can't say it's successful for me. But again, donations are very rare and scarce, and it's really a pity because there are companies making. My project, and I'm sure many more projects more important than mine are being used by, you know, enterprises, companies who are making bazillions of money, and it's been in their own interest to keep the project going over time. So right now I'm kind of I found a fantastic contributor and maintainer for the Cerberus project, Funky Future. He's a German guy, by the way, and he's been maintaining Cerberus during the last year or two. I don't have a maintainer for Eve itself, so I'm still maintaining it. But, you know, to keep working on a project for so many years, you need motivation. And as soon as your company isn't really invested in your own company, I mean, my own company isn't invested in the framework as it used to be 8 years ago, you risk the maintainer to stop working on it. And you really want, as a company making money out of the project, to keep the people focused on the project. So I really don't see why an enterprise should not invest in the project, in the software they're using.
And we have seen the consequence in the Heartbleed thing a couple of years ago. What can come out of that? But that's everywhere, unfortunately. Stefan Bin, author of LXML, he said me absolutely the same thing. So many companies have 100% LXML installed and using 100%, pretty much any. But all of the contributions come from private people like us for whatever reasons, just not in the
absolutely.
corporate culture.
The few money I'm getting from donation are for private. Just one company I think is contributing, but most of them are just people saying thank you. Just a way to say thank you. So maybe $5 a month to say thank you. I really appreciate that. But in open source, I think has to change to develop in something more sustainable. It is super important. Otherwise, you get bugs, security issues with software which are not maintained anymore, and then people complain that open source is a fad or something like that.
Absolutely.
Open source is not, doesn't mean free. It means open source. Source code is available for you to contribute and to inspect, etc. But you probably want to invest in it if you want to keep using it over time.
As Richard Stallman says, free as in freedom, and not like free, not paying.
Perfect quote.
Yes. We have one remark from Jürgen. Just ask your boss if you are allowed to spend some time on open source and you may be surprised.
Yeah. Actually, yes, I've been doing that. I'm actually spending, if you go on my Patreon campaign for HIB, you will see that what I was trying to achieve back then when I started it was just allow me 1 day per week to work on my open source project with your contributions. And when the Patreon campaign didn't really succeed as I was hoping, my employer just did that for me. It was like, okay, you can spend maybe not 1 full day, maybe a few hours every here and there, just work on the project, because yes, we are still using it, we are invested in it, not as we used to do 8 years ago, but they were very comprehensive, very kind with me. So I'm doing that, but nice. It's just not enough.
Yeah, of course. If you are the author, I guess so.
Yeah.
Actually, I tried myself. I had like a crawler with notification system posted on the GitHub like 5 years ago. I was surprised because I posted it there, not so much as my open source starts, but I just had to put it somewhere in case my laptop gets crashed or whatever. So I just pushed it to public. I thought, well, no secret there, let's have it. And I was surprised that people started sending me pull requests. That is such a funny feeling.
That's very nice. Actually, that's a very good advice. My suggestion would be to put your software there, even if you don't really need to wish for global success and adoption, etc. You might just go and put your software there for people to review or as a backup. When I went to EuroPython back in 2012, I went there just for the validation. Actually, my talk was about, hey guys, I'm doing REST APIs with Flask this way. Is that good enough for you? You are the expert. I was actually an imposter, I was coming from another language. I had just like 6 months into Python when I went to the EuroPython to talk about my work on Python. So I felt like an imposter actually. It was just to validate my code with the expert in the field. And nowadays you can do that just with GitHub. Put your code over there, people will find it, and if it is something of value, we start to use it and contribute to it, etc., and things will develop from there.
Nice. And for self-education and self-motivation. Because as soon as people start contributing, then I thought, oh shit, okay, now it's embarrassing. I need to make it nicer. Refactor the whole thing. Because when you push a thing, nobody will use it anyway. But then when they do, oh, okay, tests everything.
Yeah, that can be embarrassing. I had a few pull requests about, actually refactoring my code and improving it, making it, for example, I had a few pull requests about making it more Pythonic, and that made sense because it was coming from another language. So I was doing some stuff in the C way, and people, the experts in the field, they did exactly what I was hoping for. They showed me the way. They contributed pull requests to improve the quality of the code. I know Eve probably after 8 years, Eve still needs help with that because there are so many lines of code. But that's actually super nice because you learn by just putting your code online and people reviewing it.
True. Okay, my last question. You didn't mention Coding Dojo. Are you still doing it?
Yes, I'm actually doing it less than I used to do because I don't have the time. But we still run one Coder Dojo every month. With where now, for people who don't know, Coder Dojos are basically coding classes for kids. We do them for free. There is a network of Coder Dojos all around the world. We do that one per month in the local library here in Ravenna, and we usually gather like maybe between 20 and 25 kids, and we show them. We start playing with them, showing some way to we learn them to write games, simple games, maybe use a Scratch or other tools, and try to see if they get a passion for coding and for playing with computers in a productive way. Kind of a way to show them that there is something more to a computer than not just playing games or checking out. I don't want to say Facebook because kids nowadays don't even know about Facebook. It's just something for the old guys like me. Nowadays they use the cell phones more than the laptops themselves. But we kind of try to get more kids involved with programming and what for us is a passion, is a work, but also a passion. And we try to inspire kids to get started with programming and maybe in the future make a career out of it.
Cool. Well, good you're still doing it anyway, even if less time. I remember talking the first time about Coding Dojo. Actually, when I met Nicola, like personally the first time, it was in PyCon Italia 4 or 5 years ago. He was the one who gave me tips about PyCon Web. Back then it was just the idea, like I want to do a conference in Munich. And Nicola started right away, like, yeah, we do this Coding Dojo. I might know some people, some organizers connected here and there, and it worked. So it's good. It's cool. And
very nice. I do remember that evening.
Yes, and then 3 years later or 4 years later, you came with your Triumph motorbike and you made the keynote. That was like the elegant touch at the end,
Yeah, I really appreciated that. It was very nice. Actually, my first motorbike trip out of Italy, so it was super nice. But also, it was very nice to come to Munich and give a keynote at your event because, to be honest, when we talked back many years ago, I was like, this guy is super cool. Hopefully, he will manage, but it is such a hard and long way to get and pull off, a new conference. And you actually did deliver very well. So, congratulations.
We had support. I mean, I wouldn't do it without support. So it was really nice to meet a lot of cool people. Okay, one final question here from Laisa. The organizer of PyLadies Munich is asking you for advices for people who want to start contributing to open source. Final inspiration, Nicola.
Yeah. As I said in one of my last slides, I would say if you're already doing some programming, start by looking at your own toolchain. Maybe you're using, I don't know, Visual Studio Code, for example, for writing Python or JavaScript. They are accepting pull requests, and there are issues with Visual Studio Code, even in the documentation. Do what I did. I went and fixed the documentation for Visual Studio tools for Python. Maybe you can just contribute with some existing project, start with that. And I mean, not everybody can be an author, an open source author. We just don't have the bandwidth for that. But almost certainly everyone can be an open source contributor. So don't be shy. Go out and find something to contribute to. Maybe one day you will just fix a typo in the documentation, and then you take coverage, and things start rolling for you. And even just a contribution is 100% better than no contributions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicola, for inspiring so many people.
You're welcome. It was great being with you guys.
This is where we can end the YouTube broadcast. I will stay in Skype for some more minutes. Lisa says thanks, and I absolutely agree with her. I think you get a big thanks from the whole audience for joining us tonight, especially for waiting so long to give your talk. So yeah, I'm super happy I got you first on the keynote and now on the Python show.
Yeah,
so thanks
thank
for
you.
joining us, Nicola.
Appreciate it.
Yes, I published the link. I published the link in chat where others can join us for a minute or two. And I guess that's when we finish the broadcast. The link is in the chat and in the description. So if you want, just follow it. So thanks a lot to everybody and to our great speakers. And I see you in a week or two. Bye.
Bye.